Hello, Assalamualaikum Puan Anita.
Waalaikumsalam.
How are you?
Good, Alhamdulillah. How are you, Anis?
Fine, thank you. I think, Selena, are we going to start now? Okay. I'll make an introduction. I'll do the introduction. First of all, Assalamualaikum, good morning, happy Friday, and of course, happy Deepavali to all our Indian friends. For those of you who have joined in, thank you very much. Okay.
Good, Alhamdulillah. How are you, Anis?
Fine, thank you. Okay, with us today is Puan Anita Abu Bakar. She is the president of the Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association. In short, it's called MIASA. They are located in PJ, Petaling Jaya. So today we are having this webinar titled Emptiness, Rage, Depression. How do we cope with overwhelming emotions? So I think most of us have read the news. And I would say since the pandemic started last year up until now, the cases of mental health issues have been on a significant rise in Malaysia. And just recently during the budget, it was also mentioned that mental health has been brought to the attention of the government. And this is something that association such as MIASA, where the government as well as other NGOs can collaborate with them to spearhead this issue and make it not just an agenda, an independent agenda for small organization, but make it highlighted as a national issue which needs the attention of many public as well as the private sectors. With that, I hand over the session to you, Puan Anita, for your sharing of the subject. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Anis. Thank you for having me once again today with a different topic, more on how do we cope with overwhelming emotions. And I think, Anis, you have positioned it well where, I'm able to now just open up the conversation and also write to my presentation. But yes, true enough, with the recent budget announcement, this is actually, of course, the first time in history where a big recognition is given to NGOs on the ground, especially on the work that we do. And obviously, with more funding and support, we are able to expand, whatever services, this collective effort that everyone is trying to do. And obviously, we need more comprehensive mental health services. And one of the things that MIASA champions is, of course, empowering the community so that, eventually people, become a resource. That way, no one gets left behind. So going to today's topic, let me just share really quickly my slides. Let me know if you can see it, Anis.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I prepared this presentation on the topic of emotional dysregulation, but it is basically on how do we cope with overwhelming emotions. But of course, we would like to do a little bit of revision so that everyone we're all on the same page, and of course so that other people that weren't with us during the first session have a little bit of insights on what we would like to discuss and where we're coming from today's discussion. So I just want to share really quickly on this video. How are you? This is actually a reenactment of our circle time, so please do lean back and enjoy.
I'm frightened.
I'm isolated.
I'm numb.
I'm very exhausted. Assalamualaikum. Hello everyone. My name is Amina Johar. I've been diagnosed with MDD and anxiety disorder for 2.5 years. What it feels like to have this mental illness is like you are in a constant storm and you feel trapped.
My name is Farid Zahir. I usually go by Farid. I'm 25 years old and I was diagnosed with MDD and anxiety disorder when I was hospitalized in PPUM 2 years back. Generally speaking, how it feels like is that it's different extremes. One day I can sleep for 1 hour and I'll be fine. Another day I can't sleep at all. I get angry and sad some days, and different days I'll just be fine. Yeah, so it's that, and the feeling of hopelessness, of being not good enough and things like that. It's a constant thing in life, being numb, not being able to do anything. You want to be productive, but at the same time you just procrastinate because you just don't want to deal with things. So yeah, that is what I've been feeling all this while. So yeah, that's my story.
Nama saya Zainal, dah didiagnose dengan dysthymia dan anxiety disorder. Saya dah didiagnose selama 2 tahun. Rasa seperti robot, tak bernyawa. Sampai kata tak boleh buat apa-apa pun. And it's feel like very numb.
Hi, my name is Dan, and I'm probably the oldest in this group. I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Life really became meaningless. If 40, now I'm 65, so it's been 20 years, and life really becomes to feel very meaningless after you go on for so long.
Hi everyone, my name is Zulaika and I'm 25 years old. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2015. For me, what it feels like to struggle with these illnesses is that I feel like I lose myself completely. I do tend to lose myself and lose my rationality and my sense of happiness and cheerfulness. So I would say that is how I feel when I do struggle with these things.
Okay, all right. So that's just a reenactment of our circle time people that are struggling with mental health disorders, and this is what we would like to talk more about today. Obviously, due to the whole pandemic hit, more people are going through mental health challenges, and now that we're preparing ourselves going into an endemic, living with COVID-19, there's this meta-analysis that was done. The article came out a couple of days ago, last week actually, on 7 countries where they discovered that 1 in 5 individuals that were inflicted with COVID-19 also had a mental health issue. So imagine on top of the data that we currently have. 2.3% of Malaysians struggling with depression, 29.2% of the population ages 16 years old and above, which is 4.2 million of the Malaysian population struggling with mental health issues. And then now with COVID, more people are struggling, hence why there has been an influx of people reaching out for the help, and hence why conversations like today is really important, so that we know what to do and how to overcome it, and where can we seek for help. Because truly, although there are now more resources available, if we don't understand where to get help, how much does it cost, for example, what are the processes like, it will be challenging for you to access the help as well, and creates a lot of frustration at the same time. So understanding mental health help is also something that needs to be learned, but alhamdulillah, of course, today more people are sharing it on social media, so a lot of resources are made available and made more visible visible. Even for MIASA, those of you that know of family members, your loved ones, friends, and yourself, if you are struggling with any kind of mental health struggles, MIASA, we recently launched our 24/7 crisis helpline. You can reach out to us at 1-800-820066. So that is also available. And we are also available to go to you in crisis at certain locations, especially in Selangor and also Federal Territory. So just to go through a little bit of revision on what is mental health. Mental health, kesihatan mental, is something that we all have, like physical health, right? It's just that we don't focus on mental health. But currently, in today's world, because of the pandemic hit, one of the silver linings is, of course, we are all focusing more on mental health. It's already given priority, even by governments across the world. So this is, one of the silver linings out of this whole pandemic hit. So mental health encompasses of 6 components: emotional, social, spiritual, physical, psychological, and cognitive. So it is how we interact with our family members, how we manage stress, how we're able to contribute to society, etc. So this is why talking about emotional regulation is actually important. A lot of people do struggle with emotional dysregulation, and this is why you will see, for example, in kids, that would be easier to talk about, where you see tantrums, kids crying, kicking, punching, those kind of things, where they're not able to regulate these emotions that they don't understand, and they're really young. So parents, teachers play a very important role in knowing how to help them to understand these emotions, naming these emotions, be mindful of it, and know how to respond well. Because if not, as we grow up, it will turn into not being able, or the inability to regulate our emotions well, and so it will affect interpersonal relationships. People won't want to be near you or be friends with you, or you will be a difficult colleague in the workplace, for example, etc., etc. So that is why this conversation today on emotional dysregulation is crucial. Just want to touch on this really, really, really quickly, so that we all understand that we always want to talk about prevention and early intervention. Why is today's knowledge important? It is important because if we do something about it earlier, then the outcome will be better, right? So your prognosis, your recovery process, whatever that you're going through, that healing process will be better than a person that gets help late. And so in order for for a person to get a mental health disorder, really isn't so simple, because it has to be multifactorial, and it is a buildup of a lot of things. So these are the factors. Okay, so just really quickly, since we've talked about this in our first session: predisposing factors, which is, for example, if my dad has a mental health disorder, I'm more susceptible to it if I don't take care of my mental health, and there are other life events that trigger it. But just by having it via genetics, you cannot inherit a mental health disorder. Precipitating factors are chemical imbalances in the brain, specific events, for example, loss of loved one, reduction in income, loss of jobs, problems in marriage, for example. Perpetuating factors are conditions or things that make your condition worsen, right? So getting treatment late, severity of the condition, not having a good support system or enough treatment. So in combination, you are more susceptible to getting a mental health disorder. And of course, risk factors, right? So today, because of the whole pandemic hit, their risk factors have increased, and also a lot of contributing factors today exist. A lot of people have lost loved ones, as mentioned. A lot of people have lost jobs, a huge reduction in income. It was also interesting recently when I read on social media how they were saying people from the T20 group that have fallen into the B40 group were not paying attention to them, because they are affected very, very much. Imagine, having a paycheck of 50,000 a month, and then now today you don't have any money coming in at all, with a high commitment of probably 20, 30,000 a month. This is usually, the commitment levels of people with that kind of income bracket. So this is, one of the things that can trigger a mental health disorder, and also battling, suicidal thoughts and ideation, and also a contributing factor as why people end their lives as well, not seeing a way out, feeling trapped and hopeless in this life. Substance abuse, I think we all know this. It's a huge contributing factor. Misuse of drugs and alcohol, and of course a medical condition. So these are signs and symptoms of poor mental health. Loss of interest, you feel no pleasure in doing things that you like, you feel hopeless, you feel very tired, you're not able to concentrate, you feel irritable, you're not able to, lack of emotional control, you're not able to regulate your emotions, right? What we're going to be talking about today. You've got, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, unexplained aches. You don't know where are these, pain coming from. You didn't jog, you didn't, go swim in the sea, for example, in the hot sun, but yet you have all these unexplained physical pain. Changes in appetite, maybe you eat less or you eat more, and you feel very pessimistic, you don't see a way out, you feel hopeless, and of course then all these thoughts of ending your lives come in. So that is, signs of poor mental health. But one of the things that, we all need to understand as well is you can have poor mental health, but you don't have a mental health disorder. And you could also have a mental health disorder, but yet you have good mental health. So this is one of the things that we all need to understand why it happens. And so to also understand, if you have a mental health disorder, it's not a life sentence, right? You can actually recover from it, and you can also practice good effective coping mechanisms, and you can have good mental health as well. Okay, so what does emotional dysregulation look like? I am going to share with you this video really quickly, and then we will go ahead and discuss, or I'll discuss it since everyone is on Facebook Live. And then hopefully from there, if there are any questions, Anis can go ahead and ask me.
So what exactly is emotional dysregulations? Have you ever wondered why you get too excited, angry, or feel sad suddenly? Well, it happens with everyone, right? But what if it happens with you, often and elevated? For example, your rage reaches sky high even for the smaller issues. Or you might get extremely sad for the things which are quite petite. So, why are these impacting you more than anybody else, and why does they happen with you more often? Well, the answer lies in your brain chemistry. That is, you surely are like any other normal individual, but you might have inflexibility in regulating your emotions. This is called emotional dysregulation. Imagine when you forget to bring your favorite shirt on a trip. You surely must feel sad, but an emotionally dysregulated person might feel extremely sad, like his whole trip has been ruined. So, on a scale of 10, a normal person will feel sadness at level of 3 or 4. But an emotionally dysregulated person might feel 8 or 9 level sadness. And these are not just limited to sadness, anger, but the level of excitement might reach sky high many a times. Is there a solution? Gladly, there is. Just like any other disorder, this can also be managed to create healthy behavior patterns. Starting from understanding that you have an issue, so that you could seek help. Talk therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, anger management, or any other psychotherapy will entangle your thoughts. Though in some cases, medications are recommended to get relief from the anxiety. It surely is a long journey, but with our will we can make it out to become not just a normal person, rather an extraordinary individual.
Okay, so that is an introduction on emotional dysregulation. So it's actually a term used to describe when you're not able to respond, to things that happen to you, and outbursts happen, or you are quick to react. Of course, being human beings, we tend to be very reactive, but usually people that can regulate their emotions are able to react appropriately to the event that happens to them. So, what is emotional dysregulation and how does it happen? It's commonly thought to be an early life issue, usually, as I mentioned earlier, in a child, where it can persist to adulthood if we do not teach, parents and teachers do not teach children how to properly manage these emotions that they're going through. So it is an inability to manage the both intensity and also duration of negative emotions. So it could be fear, sadness, anger, happy, excited, both positive and also negative emotions that we go through. So it can, like I said, disrupt our relationships, right, with family, with friends, with work colleagues, and it also can affect our performance in school, inability to perform effectively in our work or job. So as you can see here, it is also a mental health issue. So the effects of a prolonged negative emotion, maybe it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be behaviorally intense, and it is associated actually with a lot of psychiatric disorders. So normally, we hear of depression. So major depressive disorder is one. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. And also complex post-traumatic stress disorder, where people that go through PTSD or complex PTSD go through, for example, flashbacks. Then they become, for example, they get scared. There's a lot of fear. They panic. There's a lot of anxiety. They shiver. All these different things. And of course, borderline personality disorder, when you're not able to regulate your emotions, you can, for example, get very angry. You get mad at everyone. You can throw things, break things, for example, because you do not know how to regulate your emotions, so you don't know how to channel it well. And of course, substance abuse, those that misuse drugs and also alcohol, and then it becomes a harmful coping mechanisms as well, because you don't know how to deal with all these emotions, all these events and tragedies that happen with you, because life happens, right? And so in order for you to find relief from feeling upset or feeling sad or feeling stressed, going through grief, for example, you resort to alcohol and drugs. And so all these things are all temporary relief. And so that is why it's very important for us to understand on how to regulate these emotions, how to deal with feeling overwhelmed, so that we do not use temporary coping mechanisms that are harmful to regulate these emotions. So it's a false way to regulate emotions. So it can be associated also with an experience of early psychological trauma. So for example, children that go through difficult family relationships, brain injury, for example. So in children, it's child abuse, child neglect, institutional neglect, and also attachment disorders. It could be childhood trauma, traumatic brain injury, and also chronic low levels of invalidation. So if we're in a family environment where whatever issues that we go through, all these emotions, whatever that we have on our plate, we don't feel validated, then it will be very difficult for us to understand what we're going through and how to respond properly or appropriately to the events that happen. So, what are symptoms of emotional dysregulation? So, it could be severe depression, anxiety, high levels of shame and anger, self harming, excessive substance abuse, high risk sexual behaviors, extreme perfectionism, conflictual interpersonal relationships, disordered eating. So, even eating disorders are highly related as well to emotional dysregulation, and suicidal thoughts and attempts as well. So sometimes when we see, people getting angry and we say, you've got an anger management problem, this also indicates, the individual does not know how to regulate all these emotions, and it's not something for us. Maybe we feel that that person is not being reasonable, but we don't know the underlying issue, the root cause as to why people get angry easily, right? There must be something underlying that they're not processing or haven't processed well, and they don't know how to deal with it. So the easiest thing is to is to punch, is to hit, is to shout, is to scream. So this is actually what happens. And emotion dysregulation or emotional dysregulation, you will see it in impulsive behaviors. So that is why it is closely associated with psychiatric conditions such as borderline personality disorder, low self-esteem, problems in relationship, fears of abandonment, problem thinking, problem solving, self judgment, attempts to avoid or numbing it. So hence why the alcohol, drugs come in. So when we look at emotion regulation versus emotion dysregulation, so with individuals that are able to regulate their emotions well, that means you're able to respond in a modulated full range of intensity. Whatever situations that we go through in life, we are able to adapt, and we know how to respond in a correct manner. Of course, it's on a continuum and also adaptive, and we are able to access executive function. So, be it our memory, flexible thinking, and also self-control. So, people that are able to regulate their emotions usually are in control of how they will respond next on whatever situations that they are going through in life. But individuals that are facing challenges, right? So they go through emotion or emotional dysregulation, maladaptive pattern of regulation emotions that may involve a failure of regulation or interference in adaptive functioning. So this is why when you're not able to respond well, you're not able to calm down, anything that happens to you, you get, angry easily, or you get very sensitive, or you feel hurt easily. All these things show that you do not know how to regulate your emotions well and operating at high intensity. So everything becomes very intense. You're not able to relax. You're not able to calm down. You're not able to distress easily. Everything becomes extreme worry, extreme anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of panic, a lot of sadness, a lot of anger. Everything is at an extreme, exactly and precisely what the video just showed, right? So if you are, you go somewhere, you forget your favorite clothing, a normal person feels sad. Yes, I wish I brought my favorite clothes. And you feel sadness level 3. But a person that is not able to regulate their emotions well, that sadness may be extreme 8, and then it can lead to other emotions as well. And that whole trip may be a disaster just because that you forgot to bring your clothes and you don't know how to regulate these emotions. So it hooks on, and it continues to hook on, and it disrupts that whole event. And of course, lack of executive function, you're not able to process all these different things well. So this is a difference between a person that is able to regulate emotions and the other person that is not able to regulate their emotions well. So having said this, what are some ways, if we now are fully aware? Puan Anita, betul lah. I don't think I can, I easily, I can jump easily when something happens. I tend to be very reactive. I get mad easily. I get irritated. I feel uncomfortable. I feel sad. I feel hurt, for example. So how do we cope with this emotional dysregulation, especially if we are an adult already? There are some really good tools that we can use, and when you know of these available tools, please do practice it, because it may sound simple, but let me tell you, the outcome of it, if you practice this, is very powerful and extraordinary. And I think I've shared with everyone the 4 square breathing technique during the first session, but I've included the video here. So when you have time, do look at the video, practice it, because if you do this, it will give you a huge relief if you are feeling, you're going through overwhelming anxiety, or you're going through a panic attack, or you feel very stressed. Regulate your breathing. Sometimes we forget to breathe, right? Because we're going through this hustle and bustle in life. We have so many things that we need to do at the workplace, and then sometimes we tend to forget to breathe correctly. So once you practice this deep breathing technique, which only takes a couple of minutes, you will feel a huge difference, right? You'll be able to calm down. You can de-stress. It allows you room to pause, because every time when something happens, like I said, we tend to be reactive. We want to respond fast, but let's pause. Let's do that breathing technique. When you're driving to work, for example, when you're just taking a short break at the workplace, try doing this 4 square breathing technique. I'll just click on the video really quickly so that we have an overview again on how it works, yeah? Hi, welcome to the 4 square breathing technique. This breathing exercise is a part of relaxation techniques and will help you in reducing stress or anxiousness, as well as improving our lung capacity. Before we start, make sure you are in a comfortable position. You can either sit or lie down to relax your body. Slowly close your eyes for a good experience and follow these instructions. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, and pause 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's repeat. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, and pause 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, and pause 1, 2, 3, 4. You may repeat this at least 5 times and increase your time as the exercise becomes easier and more comfortable for you. Remember, you are safe now. Okay, so that is the deep breathing technique. Like I said, it's a powerful tool. So now that you guys know it, please do try and practice it every single day, especially those that go through overwhelming stress, anxiety, and also panic attacks. I know that since this whole pandemic hit, a lot of people have reached out saying that they go through a lot of panic attacks, especially now that we're all returning to work, to our physical offices, and a lot of people are anxious at the moment. So do try and practice this as much as you can. Guided imagery is also another technique, and this is more of imagining where you are at a good place, and be mindful of your surroundings. So I've also included the guided imagery video here. So when you have time, please go through this as well. Try to close your eyes and follow the instructions for this guided imagery video. Okay, emotion tracker. This is also a good thing. One of the ways that has been shown or proved that is very beneficial is via writing. So emotion tracker is also a way to identify specific emotional triggers. So when you know what your triggers are, you can see and understand, the patterns, and you can learn how to overcome them. And this method, like I said, this has been researched on, and this method can be used over the period of a lifetime and can be reviewed as a measure of progress. So you can actually compare how you're dealing with things today after you have learned all these different techniques and you are more mindful about it. um, Relaxation skills and techniques, there's so many, and one of the things that we like to talk about a lot is, of course, relaxation skills and techniques. So grounding is very important because it will help you to pull away from flashbacks, unwanted memories, negative or challenging emotions. So it's a way to distract you from thinking about all these different things or going to a place where you don't want to be at. So one of the grounding techniques that we hear about is always the five senses grounding tool. So when you are in that place or space, think about five things you can see and name it. Four things that you can feel, name it. Three things that you can hear, two things you can smell, and one thing that you can taste. So this is a very popular grounding tool that a lot of therapists, we share to everyone. And of course, mental techniques. You can count to 10, say the alphabets, spell your name, and then spell it backwards, for example. All these things help to ground you and make you mindful of the present. Okay, so this is important. And soothing techniques, repeat a coping statement, for example, or affirmation techniques, right? This moment will pass. I am in a safe place. Those kind of affirmation techniques. And self-compassion, of course. Be kind towards yourself, forgive yourself. When you are mindful, it is a process of noticing new things, which puts you in the present and makes you sensitive to the context and perspective. So you don't, you're not reactive, and also you have time to actually be more mindful of what is happening. And a lot of time, what causes a lot of fatigue is when we are thinking not mindfully, right? Which is the mindless state, which is really energy consuming. So we don't want to do that. So for me, mindfulness technique is one technique that I feel can help a lot of people that are struggling at the moment. Okay, so what are some treatments that are available? So, emotional dysregulation isn't a disorder, but if you're not able to regulate emotions well, it can lead to all these intense emotions, as mentioned earlier. So, having support, building a strong and supportive therapeutic relationship is helpful. For those that have emotion dysregulation, I think it's very important being in family, in a family environment where if you are going through all these difficult emotions, that you have a place to open up and talk about it, right? And then there is a family member that is supportive and can validate what you're going through, what you're experiencing, and hold space for you so that you are being heard. Being a child, this is especially important, but being adults and going through different challenges, you need that sounding board as well. So support is truly important in anything that we go through in life. Therapy is actually second, and then medication, but medication can be used to treat emotional dysregulation as well. A part of larger mental health disorder, for example, stimulants to treat ADHD, antidepressants to treat depression, for example. And when you have these medication in your body, concurrent to that, we need to learn other coping mechanisms. So the medication serves as a walking stick, I always say. Therapy is usually the main treatment method, especially again for people with more challenging symptoms, especially people with borderline personality disorders, where they find it very challenging to regulate their emotions. So DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, where the therapist will teach you on, as I mentioned, cultivating mindfulness. So a lot of mindfulness techniques will be taught during the DBT session, validating of emotions, because a lot of people that go through BPD, they have a lot of trauma, and they, as they were growing up, they didn't have spaces where their emotions or whatever that they went through in life were validated. So this is also why these kind of disorders can become worse if no interventions are given. So mindfulness techniques in DBT is very, very helpful. And even if you want to learn DBT, you can just take that chunk of mindfulness out and read that chapter. I think that would be so helpful for many of us, because it will teach you how to manage your emotions and how to control your emotions well. How to be present in the moment, how to become aware of your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and how to deal with stressful situations better. Inshallah. Okay, so that's just a bit on how do we overcome and what are the treatments available and what can we do. I think the most important thing of it all is to be fully aware if you are indeed able to regulate your emotions, or if you are having troubles. Okay, because a lot of people, especially men, for example, not being biased, but a lot of men use usually harmful coping mechanisms to deal or numb all these emotions because of how our culture or how we've been brought up. Men up, boys don't cry, men can't show their vulnerability, it's a sign of weakness, for example. So a lot of men try to numb all these different emotions, and so that is why they're not able to regulate these emotions well, because from young they were taught to just tough up, right? You've got to tough it out, for example. So all these emotions from young were not, or situations that they go through weren't validated. They don't know how to process it, and in turn it becomes a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and then it can lead to harmful coping mechanisms as well. So how do we help each other? Come from a place of empathy and compassion, family support, as mentioned, listen to understand, work together, and also normalize this discussion so that people don't feel afraid, people don't feel embarrassed, people feel more encouraged and braver to seek for the help. And this is what we've seen during this pandemic hit, where more people have reached out. We've now able to normalize this discussion. A lot of people are impacted today, so we've built a lot of empathy and compassion. So today more people are helping each other because we now are affected, and the normal people prior to the pandemic that were not really struggling with mental health struggles now get a glimpse of it. So this is again one of the silver linings as well. So again, we've included all the different helps available in Malaysia and the whole process. Like I said, understanding mental health help is also something that we need to learn, because if not, we're gonna find it difficult to access the help when the help is actually available already. Okay. And of course, what do we need to do when we encounter people that need support? Again, knowledge is transformative, so learn it. Seek knowledge, try to understand why your loved one is behaving a certain way, because when you have knowledge, then you will gain empathy. And when you gain empathy, this is when it's a lot of mindfulness coming in, right? Because when we're mindful, just think of it as your thoughts are transparent. So imagine what you're thinking is transparent. Everyone can see it. In that way, you're going to be more mindful instead of judging, instead of being quick to judge, right? Or labeling. What we're going to do is we will then try to understand it from that person's perspective. So this is when empathy comes in, right? Having empathetic concern, having the ability to sense, what does this person need from me? What can you provide? Because sometimes we limit ourselves to certain things that we actually feel helpless because we feel that we don't have any tools to help the other person, when in actual fact, just listening, holding space for the person where they feel heard and validated can actually help to save a life. Okay. So I encourage treatment, set specific goals, small, realistic ones. Take one thing at a time, baby steps. Even if it doesn't work out, you can try again the next day. What is important is don't give up. Okay. listen to understand, listen for emotions, and provide emotional support. So it doesn't mean that you have to be there 24/7, but just by telling the person, if you need me, I am here for you. Okay, that in itself can provide a lot of help, can help provide a lot of validation and hold space for the person. In that sense, they will be able to go through that recovery process better and effectively. So I think that is all that I have to share today, Anis. I will end here and hand it over to you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attention.
Thank you, Puan Anita, for the very informative webinar.
Thank you,
think,
Serena.
I think the issues on mental health is really getting more and more attention on, and but a lot of people are not aware on the deeper understanding on the thing behind it, like
Yes,
what
correct.
causing it, how to deal with it, So sorry.
No worries.
So there are a few questions on the ground. I think you need to mute. There are a few questions on the ground where there are some people actually addressing it currently. So we go into our Q&A session.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So the first question is actually, you see, how do we help a friend who is struggling emotionally? Because people might not take it very positively and will think that we are trying to interfere. So how actually do we go about that?
Okay, that's actually a very important question. So what you do is just prompt the person. So for example, say, how are you doing today? Is there anything that you would like to share? I know that what you're going through is a lot, for example. So try to come from that place of empathy, hold that space, and prompting short, direct questions for the person. If the person isn't ready, that's okay. You can just tell the person, I'm here if you need to talk. That kind of thing. So that in itself really helps, because sometimes when you're going through very difficult situations or emotions, maybe you don't feel ready to open up, or you find it challenging to open up. But if the person trying to help, just be patient. Just ensure or reassure the person that you're there. Eventually the person will open up to you. So you need to build that rapport and that trust first. I think that's very important. And one of the other things that that we need to also understand is, when we want to help a person that is going through a difficult situation or in crisis, it's not going to be something easy or something fast. Just because you ask the person doesn't mean they're going to open up right then and then. So it will sometimes take a little bit of time. So you've got to be patient if you want to help a person, and just continue to be consistent in that process. Be with the person in that journey. Macam
Right.
tu.
Okay. Yep. I think building the trust with that person is very important, because with
Yes.
trust only they're willing to open up themselves to you.
Yeah,
And
and
then,
also and also for the person to feel safe, Serena. Sometimes they don't feel safe. We don't feel safe, and that is why we don't want to open up. But if we can build that trust, if we feel safe, we feel validated, then the person will eventually open up.
I agree on that. And there's another thing is that, what if there are people that are actually in denial on their own feelings, and there are people who are aware that they are in denial, but there are also people who are in denial but they are not aware of that, and they
Yeah.
actually believe they are in the feelings they are in denial of. So how do we go about with people like that?
Right. For me, I always say, try to imagine if you are that person, right? What would you really need? If you're a family member, if you're a good friend, you have to do something about it. If the person is in denial and can't see it, right? So, like I said, just be there. Slowly try to have that conversation, right? Don't just leave the person. Because if you're that person, you wouldn't want anyone to leave you, right, Serena? You would want somebody to be patient and consistent, right, trying to help you out. So if you realize this, to me, just to be with the person, be consistent and be patient in that process. Okay. If the person knows but is still in denial, that's really normal, because it's a process. to accept, to come to the stage of acceptance takes a lot, right? So it is a process in itself. So eventually, because the process will happen, it's just the timing, right? So when you're going through that denial process, eventually the acceptance will come in. Like I said, just be with the person and support the person if they need it. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think ultimately being with the person is the most important. Having the human
Yes.
connections. That's
Betul.
why I think pets play a role too. For some of the people.
Yeah, pet therapy, right? Yeah, I think it's also very important for people that live alone, for example, right? Or don't have good emotional support. That's why pet therapy really helps as well. I have a friend that is homeless, and how she went through her recovery process extraordinarily was because of her four dogs. So that's also very, very helpful when you have a sense of purpose and you have a reason to live. So for her, it was because she wanted her dogs to live, so she also has to live, right? So taking care of something, right? So for her, it was taking care of her four dogs. So yeah,
Mm, yeah, like the dog become the motivation for her to live
yes,
on. Yeah.
correct.
So there's another question. It's actually on the current situation whereby it's not really current. It's a few years back. There was a news that a student actually committed suicide
Yep.
due to just bad examination result. So although it is an isolated case, how do we
Mhm.
ensure such incidents never happen again?
Right.
Never repeat itself again. Now, do school counselors actually play a big role in this?
Mhm. Okay, any suicide tragedy, right? Any suicide loss is a complex issue. So to really, although like you said, it's an isolated case, but to say that it is because of bad examination results isn't really accurate, but it can be a contributing factor if the build-up has already happened. All the different or various factors have already existed. So maybe that last hit of the examination results became that trigger to end everything, right? But just from someone getting a bad exam result cannot lead to a suicide death. Although there are situations where it can be impulsive. That means you don't have any mental health disorder, you don't have depression, you don't go through psychosis episodes, but then you end your life. Usually when this happens, it's more of for example, when you lose a job during the pandemic, right? And you have like I said, like pilots, you have a 50,000 income, and then suddenly you lose your job and you have a monthly commitment of 30,000. You don't have any money coming in, Serena. You don't have any skills at all. So that can lead to an impulsive decision of just, that's it. I have no way out. I feel trapped. I'm hopeless. Nobody's going to help me, and I'm done. That kind of thing. But even in any tragedy or in any instance, suicide is 100% preventable. If that person that was going through this, just as an example that I just gave, if somebody were to come or he shared it with somebody else, and the other person is able to show him that, look, there is a way out, that in itself could have prevented him from ending his life, you see. So similarly to, like you said, a school counselor, can they play a role? Obviously they can. Anyone can play a role in preventing suicide, even you, even Anis, and anyone that is listening. Hold space for the person. Be more observant of your colleagues, for example, in the workplace, that before, Serena, maybe you, before this, the person was cheerful, very friendly, talkative, and suddenly, you see productivity decreases, they're not performing, they're isolating themselves. Do something about it, guys. Don't ignore your colleague that is looking that way, or is you're observing that there is a change in behavior. Okay, maybe the person is waiting for you to ask them how they were doing, because based on a lot of people that have attempted suicide and have survived, have said that when they were going through that process, that trapped that thought process where they thought there was no way out, that they wished, Serena and everyone, that someone would just ask, how are you? But nobody hold space for them, nobody asked how they were doing, so they thought that nobody cared. and they thought and assumed that there was no way out. So this is why it is so important to talk about it, to open up, to be vulnerable. And that is why vulnerability is actually a strength. It's not a weakness. And so that is why a lot of men, you try to numb it and you try to close everything. You try to show people that you have it all together. Even women, right? Especially in the workplace, when we're professionals, how our working culture in Malaysia typically is you have to have it all together, right? You cannot show any signs of weakness, etc. Right, Serena? But this is not what it is, guys. We're human beings. We're not robots. We are totally entitled to feeling sad, depressed, whatever difficult emotions that we're going through. Talk to someone. In 2019, the World Mental Health Day theme was actually depression. Let's talk. We had World Health Organization with World Federation of Mental Health had to do a theme of encourage people to actually talk about it, Serena. Can you imagine? We're not being human beings today. We need to talk to each other. We need to, open up whatever that we're going through now more than ever because of this whole pandemic. Definitely.
Yeah, totally agreeing with you on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Puan Anita, for that. I think we're going on the last questions.
Sure.
So, on the last question is that understanding in the working environment that you mentioned, do you think that there's a progressive changes in terms of the working culture? Because in terms of the importance of vulnerability that you said, but showing vulnerability in the working environment is certainly a sign of weakness currently in our working culture. How do you think in terms of the corporate level or in terms of the companies out there, what do you think the action should be made by them? Do you think it should start with the culture itself, the people itself?
I think it all comes from the very top. If top management, if bosses are able to expose their vulnerability, I think it provides room, it paves way for the whole culture to change. Because I forgot which company that we went, and he was saying that he shared his vulnerability and he was one of the top bosses, and the employees felt so inspired by him, although he had a mental health disorder. So can you see what a huge difference it makes when, as a person that is a leader of a company and is a man, to be able to show and disclose, look, I am struggling with depression, I struggle as well with suicidal thoughts and ideation. And it actually not only helps people, but it actually inspires people, Serena. So I think when it comes to the workplace, it always starts from the top. Of course, you know this, everyone knows this. So we need to build that culture. And when we talk about culture, I feel that if we're able to provide reasonable accommodation, reasonable adjustment, the company itself has a policy where we support people with mental health disorders by providing these different accommodations and adjustments, people or employees will feel encouraged and braver to seek for the help, to open up, and it paves way for other people, especially new employees that come into the company, right? So you're not going to feel afraid, you're not going to feel embarrassed, you're not going to feel insignificant or demotivated or self-esteem drops. You are going to feel happier, you are going to be able to be more productive in the workplace, and it will reduce absenteeism, let me tell you. So I think work culture as a whole can be changed, but it needs to start from the top. Definitely. Yep.
Yes. Okay, just one more. I just got another question now, just the last one. Okay. This is something very different from what we have been discussing. So
Okay.
basically what is written here was that besides, having a very positive thinking, having people around you, voicing out, being not afraid of being vulnerable, trying to let other people understand what you're going through and receive help, at the same time willing to receive help from other people. What about our lifestyle? Do our lifestyle make a difference? And what about our diet?
Oh my God. Such an important question. Thank you so much for asking that. Lifestyle, diet, truly important, truly significant, Serena. Lifestyle, definitely. You see, we live in a culture, again, when it comes to working culture, right? Asians are so different, right? Because we're all about productivity. Even when it comes to a school setting, it's all about performance, exam oriented. This is where we really need to shift. And I think this pandemic has helped us to shift, because we know UPSR done, abolished, this is one of the good things that came out via this pandemic. So lifestyle means you gotta sleep well, guys. Okay, you have to know your boundaries. Okay, so sleep well, sleep before 11 o'clock. You have to have that lifestyle of sleeping enough, sleeping on time. It doesn't mean you sleep at 2, you get up at 10, you've got 8 hours clocked in. No, the body repairs itself at 11. So you need to know this clock, right? Your wake sleep cycle. So you got to have that sleeping pattern regularly. You've got to eat well, so that balanced diet needs to come in. Nutritious food, okay? That diet is very, very important. Mediterranean diet is the best. You've got lots of fruits and lots of vegetables. I think now we've got evidence, right, Serena? In Malaysia, look at the COVID deaths. If you compare us with the UK, for example, in terms of population, apple to apple, right? We're looking at Malaysians, so many Malaysians dying still on a daily basis. And we're figuring it why. EPL right now, you look at the stadium, football stadium, 60,000 people, no mask, and people are dying, 30 people are dying on a daily basis. And we're following SOPs with masks, with fully vaccinated. 95% of the adult population in Malaysia are fully vaccinated, and we still have a high death rate. Why is this? This is lifestyle. We're not exercising, and we're eating bad food. We're eating, of course, these are all our staple foods, but roti canai daily, no. Teh tarik daily, no. Nasi lemak daily, definitely no. And you've got your fast food, right? You've got the burgers, you've got the junk food, the chips, the everything. So yes, definitely, Serena and everyone, we need that good lifestyle, promoting good habits. Exercising is the other thing. If we look at European countries again, they walk a lot, right? For us, we want to park the closest to the entry door as possible, right? We get very frustrated if the parking space is so far out. But Europeans are different. Everything that they do, they've got that diet, they've got that nutritious food, they've got that walking, the exercising. So all this needs to come as part of our lifestyle. Definitely. If we do this, not only are we going to be physically healthy, we are going to be mentally healthier as well. So I think this is so important. And again, if we do all this when we're healthy, we don't have all these different, various NCDs that a lot of people are struggling with, high blood pressure, hypertension, cancer, all these different things that it's difficult to survive, COVID when this happens as well. Yep.
Is there any very specific food or ingredients or even supplements that can very specifically targeting to improve the mental health?
I know that a lot, from research, etc. Fish oil, magnesium, all these are very, very important. And of course, when we want to eat food, it must be hot, hot prepared food. It can't be cold food, cold drinks, gas, caffeine. These are all really bad things. They're delicious. They're you feel really happy when you eat them, but it's not necessarily good for you. So for me, try to avoid it as much as possible. You can have one cheat day. That's what everybody says, one cheat day per week or maybe twice a month. But yes, try to eat on time. That's the most important thing, and have hot meals. And sometimes people that already have, very upset, gut or stomach, please try to avoid food that contributes to wind. And also reflux, right? So that's why all these gassy things are not good for you. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we can practice.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Puan Anita, for
Thank you so
the
much.
very informative sessions and answering all the questions.
No worries.
Okay, so I think it has come to an end. Do you want to add on anything?
I think I'm good. I just want to say thank you so much, Anis, Serena, and everyone for tuning in today. I really hope it was beneficial. Please take care of your health, both physical and mental health, and let's continue to help one another. Don't be afraid. Don't be embarrassed to open up. To open out or to be vulnerable, because the earlier you get help and treatment, the better the outcome will be, definitely. And we are all struggling. You may not see it, but everyone is struggling with something. So important thing, be kind, have empathy and compassion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I think if anyone who would like to seek help in terms of mental health, they also can seek out to MIASA as well.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just recap again. Puan Anita is actually the president of the MIASA. So it's very glad that we are very proud that we are able to have Puan Anita on board today to share with us more on the insights on how to cope with emotional dysregulation, also as well as the overwhelming emotions.
Yep.
So thank you so much, Puan Anita.
Thank you.
Hope that
Thank you
we will
very much,
have another
everyone.
webinar together again and talk more about this again.
Sure, definitely.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye.